This episode of Bend the Knee is brought to you by Lady Lois Lane, whose words are, "Look, it's a bird."
Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today, we are in Eddard 6 of A Game of Thrones. And in A World of Ice and Fire, we are discussing Aerys Targaryen, second of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm.
Otherwise known as the Mad King.
The Mad King himself. So we're there. We're finally there.
We're there.
Before we get started.
Yeah, you know, we're doing something different today.
Yeah. Because
this is going to be a long podcast. Hope you guys are ready.
Well, and really, there's something I want to set you guys up with. I want you to think about something. So I think we've actually, I don't know if we mentioned it before, but it kind of came up again today on our research, as we were looking through things. And the question is, how does Ned know where Lyanna was at? How does he know that, Sir Matt? How does he, when he, Tywin is in King's Landing, the Lannister banner is there, Jaime's sitting on the Iron Throne, and after that, next thing we know, he is taking, 6 men with him?
Yeah.
Handful of men, and going to track down Lyanna.
Mm-hmm.
So who tells him? Why doesn't Robert go with him? So if he gets that information, why doesn't Robert take his whole host and track down Lyanna?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we were looking at maps.
Yeah.
For this because we're going to be talking about Gendry quite a bit today.
Yep.
Because that's who the Ned chapter will focus on. So we started looking at who Gendry's mom, who could Gendry's mom be,
right.
Show and book.
Yep.
More specifically the book, obviously. But then it kind of led us down some other paths. We started talking about the Robert's Rebellion and things like that. And then I was looking at the map and I was like, man, the first battle.
Right.
Well, technically you could say the first battle of Robert's Rebellion is kind of over there in the Vale, just kind of where once Jon Arryn's drawing his banners. But
yeah.
The real first battle is considered at Summerhall. And then they go from Summerhall to Ashford.
Yeah.
And the Tower of Joy is like right there. It's right next to it. And you would have to think that, obviously Robert wouldn't know. Otherwise, Robert would send his entire army. That's
absolutely.
He would just say, nope, we're going here.
Right.
And then we think about it and we're like, why didn't Robert send his entire army to go get Lyanna?
Yeah, he didn't know where she was.
So
right.
So then we thought, well, how does Ned
figure it out? Yeah.
So we have some theories. Possibly Ashara Dane tells him.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But so just a good question.
Just something to start the show off with. You guys think about it. Send us a raven for Follow-Up Friday. And you can send that to btkcast@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. We'll leave you with that, and we'll actually dive back into it here in just a bit.
Yeah.
But time to jump into Small Council.
Yeah, absolutely. So just life news.
Not much, just still busy.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the gym.
Yeah, which is good.
We got
a trial coming up.
We got a trial coming up, and it's time to hit the iron.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been doing that. And yeah, that's really just about it. It's just the grind.
Yeah, I don't think either of our football clubs we picked are doing very well.
Nope.
Which is fine. I did see it was like I think Tottenham has some like Asian player who got
it's going nuts.
Well, I think there's something I don't know. I just saw some news posting about somehow he skipped military service he had to do or something. Or
Whoa.
I don't know.
Huh. Okay.
I don't know. I just I'm trying to get into it more.
It's hard when your team's just getting whooped around.
It is, yeah. So, but Man U, they'll they'll finish strong.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But and so obviously, this is my week.
Make
the King's Road journey.
Yeah. We got a lot of recording to do this week.
We do. Luckily, tomorrow is a holiday, so Ezra and I are going to record quite a few episodes ahead.
Yeah.
But we should be next follow-up Friday, not this coming one, but the following one will be the first one we do.
Yeah.
Via the Weirwood Network, and I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Just bear with us for like a week or two to kind of figure out the. We've done it before. We're just trying to figure out the best way to do it. We know how to do it. We just want to make sure it's as crisp and clean as possible.
It's got to be good. So
yeah, it does. Yeah. So.
So that's good. So that'll be coming up. A lot of people have wished you well on your journey. So that's good. Hopefully, you might encounter a few hedge knights along the way, and I encourage you to take comfort by their fire, share some mead, meat.
Yeah, I'm going to be driving
cheese.
through, let's see, the kingdom of Nebraska, Utah, Idaho, and into Oregon. So,
Yep.
Yeah, luckily there's a trail, an Oregon trail.
That's good.
Yeah. So.
That's good. Important.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's any show news we want to talk about?
Yeah, just there are a lot of interviewers and the press are asking a lot of people who have been in the show just their thoughts on the ending, kind of get secrets, whatever.
Right.
And Finn Jones, I believe is his name, is the guy who plays Loras Tyrell.
Okay.
Who obviously wasn't in this last season. They were just kind of asked on how he thinks the series is going to end, and he kind of went with a darker route. He's like, I think everyone's going to die.
Wow.
That's just it. That's just,
they're all dead.
Yeah, a lot of people have like, oh, maybe this guy will sit there and throw around, whatever. But a lot of people seem to think a lot of people are going to die. But he just says, I think everyone dies.
What? The Night King sits on the throne or something?
No, they all die. It's like big war. Everyone dies.
Just done.
Yeah. Maybe it's because he's bitter because he dies on the show, and like this great fashion where everyone does die.
Yeah.
In King's Landing. So.
All right. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Everyone else. I've read. The guy who plays Jaime Lannister, the woman who plays Missandei, all kind of say the same thing. It's bittersweet.
Yeah, they're all being coached to say bittersweet, and we don't know what that means.
We don't know.
So that's all right. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned. If you guys have more intel on that, you want to send us something, even if it's kind of crazy, post it in the group. We got the Facebook group going now, strong. Good stuff happening there. Send us a Raven too, and we'll check it out. And the article, whatever you may have. So
yeah. All right. Here we ready for this?
Yes.
This is big. Here we go. Aerys the Second. Aerys Targaryen, the second of his name, was but 18 years of age when he ascended to the Iron Throne in 262 AC. Upon the death of his father Jaehaerys, after little more than 3 years of rule, a handsome youth, Aerys had fought gallantly in the Stepstones during the War of the Nine Penny Kings. Though not the most diligent of princes, nor the most intelligent, he had an undeniable charm that won him many friends. He was also vain, proud, and changeable traits that made him easy prey for flatterers and lickspittles. But these flaws were not immediately apparent to most at the time of his ascension. Not even the wisest could have known that Aerys II would in time be known as the Mad King, nor that his reign would ultimately put an end to near 3 centuries of Targaryen rule in Westeros. Though even as Aerys donned his crown in that fateful year of 262, a lusty, black-haired son named Robert had just been born to his cousin, Steffon Baratheon, and his lady wife at Storm's End, whilst to the north at Winterfell, Lord Rickard Stark celebrated the birth of his own son, Brandon. Another Stark, Eddard, followed within a year. All 3 of these infants would, in time, fullness, play crucial roles in the downfall of the dragons.
Yeah, a lot of foreshadowing going on there, a lot of things to come, and we're going to talk about all of those players here soon in the Rebellion later on and in this chapter with Gendry. But so I thought it was interesting that he fights gallantly, right?
Yeah.
In that War of the Nine Penny Kings, so he's involved in that, which is interesting. There's been like 1 or 2 people hint that he might have done something, to his father Jaehaerys and stuff like that. I really don't think he did. I don't
know. I think he did.
He might have, but like I think his father just dies and then he takes over. But maybe it is suspicious. It was 3 years and what have you. But yeah. So, but anyways, that madness. We call him the Mad King. None of that is evident here. It's just that he's very much seems like he's easily influenced.
Right.
but he's also good at making friends himself too.
Yeah.
So he's just more of a manipulator type of thing, you know. So, all right, what else we got on him?
And so it says just something else here. Aerys II did not lack for ambition. Upon his coronation, he declared that it was his wish to be the greatest king in the history of the Seven Kingdoms.
Oh yeah.
He wanted to be remembered as Aerys the Wise, or maybe even Aerys the Great. And it says right here, kind of his first thing. His father court had been made up largely of older, seasoned men, many of whom had also served during the reign of King Aegon V. Aerys dismissed them all and replaced them with lords of his own generation. Most notably, he retired the aged and exceedingly cautious hand Edgar Sloane and named in his place Sir Tywin Lannister, the heir to Casterly Rock. At 20 years of age, Sir Tywin thus became the youngest hand in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. Many maesters to this day insist that his appointment was the wisest thing that Aerys the Wise, and it has air quotes there, ever did.
Yeah,
then it starts to go into their kind of history, and they grew up together.
Right.
They were really good friends growing up.
Yeah,
and
really
they remain good friends for quite a bit of time into Aerys' reign, and then it all kind of just it kind of just starts to be like straws and camel's backs, right? Like one straw, the next straw, then he snaps, and then it's all downhill from there.
Yeah. One thing that was kind of ironic, right, is that he replaces all of these old seasoned men, with his own, people of his own age and different things. New men, his own men, and I think it was possibly because he wanted to, as you said there, he's ambitious, wants to be the greatest, right? Aerys the Great, but it actually ends up being sort of his downfall.
Yeah,
really, it's sort of what poisons him in a sense, because the men that he appoint are greater and more intelligent than he is, and everything, and so that sort of starts to spoil the relationship that he has with those people.
Well, the thing about this is that it's also interesting that this is really, you could start to argue the rule where the rule of Lannister comes in, because really Tywin is about to, a lot of people say that he's the one who rules during the rebellion, and then really Robert doesn't do much ruling himself, so it's really kind of Cersei manipulating things, and then after Robert dies.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the Lannisters have figured out how to rule the Seven Kingdoms without actually sitting on the throne necessarily. So, yeah.
So, and Tywin, let's see, isn't it Tywin who actually knights Aerys?
It talks about him getting his spurs. So when Prince Aerys won his spurs at 6 and 10, it was to Sir Tywin. He granted the honor of dubbing him a knight. In 261, Tywin Lannister had proved his prowess as a commander when he put down an uprising by two of his father's most powerful vassals. And it actually is Tywin who knights him.
Yeah, who knights Aerys? Yeah.
So that just shows their closeness and their friendship and what have you. So
then it goes on to talk about Aerys' love interests and how they kind of seems to get over people quickly. Says he was also full of grand schemes as well. Not long after his coronation, his announcement and intent to conquer the Stepstones and make them part of his realm for all time. In 264, he went to visit a visit to King's Landing, but Lord Rickard Stark of Winterfell awakened his interest in the north, and he kind of gets a plan to build a new wall hundreds of leagues north of the existing one and claim all the lands between, which I actually find interesting, and I'm surprised no one else has ever really
thought
about it.
Yeah, it's probably pretty. As it says there, he has these ambitious schemes,
right?
And he has these cool idea, but how do you pull it off?
Oh yeah, that would be like crazy.
Well, and he is kind of one of those guys though, like a big idea guy. Like, let's do this. We should do this. We should do that.
And then no follow through.
Really, no follow through. Yeah. So I knew. But and then Tywin seems to know how to just do the day-to-day, the minute attention to detail, running the realm. I bet if he were to hone in on one task like the wall, he could have possibly gotten some support behind that, and he probably could have accomplished it with Tywin's help if he really pushed that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're right here in 270 AC. He has during a visit to Sunspear, he told the Princess of Dorne that he would make the Dornish deserts bloom by digging a great underground canal beneath the mountains to bring water from the Rainwood, which is
sounds cool.
Sounds cool.
Sounds
yeah,
like
none of these grandiose plans ever came to fruition. Most indeed were forgotten within a moon's turn. For Aerys, again, seems to kind of grow bored with things. But the Seven Kingdoms prospered greatly during the first decade of his reign, for it was the king's hand was all that the king was not: diligent, decisive, tireless, fiercely intelligent, just, and stern. The gods made and shaped this man to rule. Grand Maester Pycelle wrote of Tywin Lannister in a letter to the Citadel after serving with him on the small council for 2 years. And so Grand
Maester, there's their relationship starting to
exactly. Tywin and Pycelle. So this is where it kind of starts to get into what really is kind of the downfall of Aerys' relationship with Tywin is that, and we've talked about this before, is the king kind of starts to get jealous, and Tywin will go in and kind of fix a problem, and then the Mad King will kind of go back and change it, and then he'll come back and fix it to what Tywin had it and be like, well, now it's fixed.
Right, yeah, I did it. Yeah,
I did it.
Exactly.
Yeah, they talk about they talk about what town is it where he goes in and kind of changes like the taxes.
Let's see, that's coming up here.
Or should we talk about Tywin's wife first?
Well, we can. But first, just to lay the ground, the quote that I like the most here from this is, "From Old Town to the Wall, men began to say that Aerys might wear the crown, but it was Tywin Lannister who ruled the realm."
Yeah,
and that is sort of, if you look at one thing, you had to pull one quote out of this whole thing that kind of plagues the Mad King. It's that people saying that from the Wall to Old Town. That really kind of sticks.
Yeah, right here. It was Tywin Lannister who settled the crown's dispute with the Bravosi, though without making the Titan kneel to the king's displeasure by repaying the monies lent to Jaehaerys II with gold from Casterly Rock, thereby taking upon the debts himself. And then Tywin won the approbation of many great lords by repealing what remained of the laws of Aegon V. He kind of curbs that. Tywin introduced tariffs and taxes on shipping going in and out of the cities of King's Landing, Lannisport, and Old Town, winning support of many of the wealthy merchants. Tywin built new roads, repaired old ones, holds tournaments, which even the free everybody likes, and sternly punishes bakers found guilty of adding sawdust to their bread and butchers selling horse meat as beef. It is in these efforts that he was greatly aided by Grand Maester Pycelle. Who accounts of the reigns of Aerys II gave us our best portrait of these times. So there you go.
Sounds like they're doing good things.
Yeah. So then again, though, it is interesting to know that the accounts that this book is telling us from are mostly from Grand Maester Pycelle's writings. So again, this is where it all comes down to perspective and point of view. Is that theoretically this stuff could be written? Maybe Aerys wasn't doing some of these things.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, it seems also, again, this whole book is written by Maester Gildain, right? Know, but if he's pulling from what Maester Pycelle has said, then that makes a lot of sense. But like the other bit here, though, so Gildain or whoever it may be, I don't know if it, what's the other one, Yandel? Yeah, Yandel. Also writes in here though that yet, despite these accomplishments, Tywin was little loved, and it's because of his stern nature and lack of humor, and just didn't give ground a whole lot. So basically it was his way or the highway. I mean, he kind of like, this is how we're
and it's interesting because I think it's when Stannis comes and Jon is Lord Commander and he meets with, or when he's meeting with Stannis, right? He's remembering what his father had told him of Lord Stannis, and he's like, he is firm but fair, right? Whereas the difference is like Stannis is not someone, well, he kind of is because he uses like blood magic to kill his brother and stuff like that, but it seems like he's still pretty honorable, and he's not doing these like scheming like, oh, let's poison people, like the stuff that Tywin does, right? Yeah, like Tywin is like power at all costs, whereas Stannis is more
yeah, there's more honor.
There is still
he has a code, it seems like he lives by.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of these things do benefit Casterly Rock, don't they? Right. some of the stuff that it benefits the crown, but then when he takes over that debt, the crown now is indebted to Casterly Rock, so there he's in a position of power now, and so you kind of owe me, and look at all the things that I've done to help.
And it just starts here because we know by the time that when Lord Eddard stows up to the council and he's like, wait, you're telling me that we're in, debt, $3 million in debt to Casterly Rock, pretty much. So Tywin is little loved. And
talks about his family a bit, which I thought was interesting, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Lord Titus Lannister, his father, right? And then he despised his father, the weak-willed, fat, and ineffectual Lord Titus Lannister. His relationship with his brothers were also notoriously stormy. He showed more regard for his brother Kevin, who we run into Kevin quite a bit in the series, and held him as like a close confidant and a constant companion since childhood. But so really kind of a rocky. Seems like Kevin might have been close to him, and then his sister. I don't know how to say her name. Genna.
I don't really know much of her after this.
Yeah, his sister Genna was also possibly he might have been close with. But yet even in those cases, Tywin Lannister appeared more dutiful than affectionate. So even with those two siblings.
Yeah. So then in 263, after a year as the king's hand, he marries Joanna Lannister, who is his cousin. She comes to King's Landing in 259 AC for the coronation of King Jaehaerys, and then she remained there for a while as a princess or as a lady in waiting to Princess Rhaella, who later becomes queen. She marries Aerys, and says the bride and groom, which is Tywin and Joanna, had known each other since they were children. They kind of grew up together at Casterly Rock. And it says, I mean, he really, it seems like loves her, like actually loves her, which is so rare because we just don't see it from him. But maybe he is less kind of stern before she dies, and maybe it's after she dies is when he really is just like.
Yeah, it seems like there's elements of him being like super stern, but then, he definitely lets his guard down with at least Lady Joanna.
Yeah.
Which
is and so obviously we know that she ends up dying in childbirth, giving birth to Tyrion, and that's really where
again
same thing. I mean maybe that's kind of what both happens is it's Aerys, we'll get to it, he gets kidnapped, and that's really where he kind of like snaps, and then Tywin, same kind of thing where he has a dramatic shift. But sadly the marriage between Aerys and his sister Rhaella was not as happy. Though she turns a blind eye to most of the king's infidelities, the queen did not approve of his turning my ladies into his whores. Joanna Lannister was not the first lady to be dismissed abruptly from her king's service, nor was she the last. Relations between the king and queen grew even more strained when Rhaella proved unable to give him any further children. Now, Rhaegar was born at Summerhall.
Yeah.
So she already had one kid. She has a handful of miscarriages, a stillborn daughter, and then she has Prince Darren, who dies like almost after half a year. Then another stillbirth in 270. I mean, she actually is like, she spends like, it's like 12, 13 years like pregnant.
Yeah. Yep.
Like just having miscarriages and like a handful of kids that just are born and immediately die. And then kind of shift around here. The way this book is written, sometimes it has like these like segmented other things from like another maester's perspective here. So it talks a little bit about the rumor of Joanna.
Yeah, because she was abruptly dismissed.
Yes, yeah. Right? So Joanna Lannister is abruptly dismissed, and this is where it goes. We talked quite a bit about, did he take liberties during the bedding ceremony?
Right. So it says rumors that Joanna Lannister gave up her maidenhead to Prince Aerys the night of his father's coronation and enjoyed a brief reign as his paramour after he ascended the Iron Throne can safely be discounted, as Pycelle insisted in his letters. Tywin Lannister would scarce have taken his cousin to wife if that had been true, for he was ever a proud man and not one accustomed to feasting upon another man's leavings. So Pycelle's trying to put that to bed. It had been reliably reported, however, that King Aerys took unwanted liberties with Lady Joanna's person during her bedding ceremony, to Tywin's displeasure. Not long thereafter, Queen Rhaella dismissed Joanna Lannister from her service. No reason for this was ever given, but Lady Joanna departed at once from Castle Rock and seldom visited King's Landing thereafter. And so that goes back to what I know you're going to say is the twins.
Right. So
Yeah.
to me, I used to be a big kind of Tyrion is a Targaryen believer, but I think I've really come off that quite a bit, just because it seems there's really, like, when you start looking at the timelines and when things are happening, it seems almost like there's just no way it would have happened, because if he took liberties on the bedding night, then that would make the twins, that would make Jaime and Cersei more of his children than it would make Tyrion, because Tyrion comes afterwards.
Well, yeah, and you look at the incestual nature, right? And if you want to put like a find a similar characteristic between the Lannisters and Targaryens, it's like that's where it crops up,
Right, and Cersei seems much more like the Mad King, especially in like the show, right?
Yeah, Mad Queen now,
Mad Queen in the show, than Tywin, and Jaime seems kind of less like, he doesn't really seem super like his father. He kind of does his own thing. If you really want to look at it, think of the difference we sometimes have between Targaryens when they're born very close, right? Like think about Aenys and Maegor, right? As one is very bookish and not that Jaime is bookish, but just Jaime is, he's not a grand, huge schemer like Tywin and like mad of power. He wants to love his sister and like he's, in a way, he's kind of more similar to Robert than he is to his own dad. He just kind of wants to do his own thing, and that's fine. Whereas Cersei wants absolute power. So it's just interesting. So I think we don't know. We'd have to look at the timeline to specifically confirm that. But to me, that right there, this thing where if she's seldomly visiting King's Landing, when would the Joanna and Mad King thing happen?
Right.
To make Tyrion, right?
Yeah, I get you. Yep.
All right. So then it goes back into after at first his grace comforted Rhaella in her grief, but over time his compassion turns into suspicion.
Yeah, concerning the stillborns, right? All those stillborns.
Yeah. By 270 AC, he has decided that the queen was being unfaithful to him, and he has said, the gods will not suffer a bastard to sit the Iron Throne, which of course is really interesting. Maybe they're, I don't know, because I think there's already been some bastards sitting on the Iron Throne.
Yeah, there may exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Go see Darren Targaryen. All right, but thereafter he doesn't allow the queen to leave the confines of Maegor's holdfast, and decreed that two septas would henceforth share her bed every night to see that she remains true to her vows. So this is really where he starts to
lose it.
He does start to lose it. And do you think it's because of kind of the different paths that he and Tywin go on? They're friends, and then they're friends growing up, and that ultimately kind of turns into a rivalry.
Possibly, yeah, because there's already we've already mentioned the whisperings that are going on, and people are already starting to say things about, Now my thinking is the way this jumps around is like some of this stuff happens before he becomes king,
right? Just the way the book tells it.
Yeah, just the way it tells it. So I don't really know. I just think he has a suspicious nature in general. Yeah. No one ever thinks that it's their issue. I mean, like Aegon the Fifth actually warned the Targaryens about this, that the seed could become not so strong. Yeah. If we keep up with the incestual situation. Sometimes you got to go through and purify things a little bit or whatever, shake it up. So I don't know. I think this is sort of the result of that, really. It's difficult for them to have children.
Yeah.
So,
and here we go. What Tywin Lannister made of this is not recorded, but in 266 at Castle Rock, Lady Joanna gives birth to a pair of twins. But see, so that's before, right? So here it says 270 is when he gets suspicious, but 266 at Castle Rock is where she had given birth to twins. And the birth only exacerbated the tension between Aerys II and his hand. And he says, I appeared to have married the wrong woman.
Yeah, right.
So he's already upset about that. And then in 270 is where he decides she's being unfaithful. See, but the way it's told, because it's just like you said, this book does sometimes it kind of jumps back and forth in timelines, and so you kind of have to stagger things and look at it.
Right. Yeah, because he was crowned in 262.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so by 270 we've got
Yeah.
this drama.
Yeah,
going
and so
on.
in
I get you.
267, which is still before he's freaking out about his wife, is when Lord Tytos Lannister dies at the age of 640. It says his heart burst while he was climbing a step in his bedchambers. With his passing, Sir Tywin Lannister becomes Lord of Casterly Rock, Warden to the West. It says he returns to the West to attend his father's funeral and set the Westerlands in order. King Aerys decided to accompany him. So that's in 267. Those Greys left the Queen behind in King's Landing. He took his 8-year-old son Rhaegar, Prince of Dragonstone, and more than half the court. For the better part of next year, the Seven Kingdoms was ruled from Lannisport and Casterly Rock, where both the king and his hand were in residence.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that would have to be we'd have to look when Tyrion was born, because I guess that would probably be the only time it could have happened, right?
Well, let's see. So
if you do want to look at that Tyrion, let me pull it up. Let me find it.
as to when he's there, yeah, just look up when he's born, because in 266, as you said, 266 AC is when Lady Joanna gave birth to those twins, Jaime and Cersei. And then
he's born in 273, so that's
because they're back in King's Landing by 268.
Yeah, so that would not have.
But that doesn't mean that you couldn't come back again later. But it's
right.
We'll keep going and kind of see what other dates we have.
Right. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, so the court made in King's Landing at 268, and governance resumed as before.
Mm-hmm.
But it was plain to all to see. It was plain to all to see that the friendship between the king and his hand was fraying. Where previously Aerys had sided with Tywin on most matters, now they kind of they disagree here a little bit.
Right. This is where, as you said, that we start to get into these things where Lord Tywin goes in and is settling these disputes between, like you got House Blackwood, House Bracken. He's also doing things with taxes. His Grace comes in and overrules him, and sort of like just undoes what the hand does. He's going around kind of contradicting his own hand, which is weird. He's just trying to reassert himself, I think.
Yeah.
So,
and then it says around 270, he starts to dismiss any Westermen in his council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and just he
didn't trust him. He starts to get real suspicious.
Yep. Yeah, so he just disregard anything that Tywin is saying. He kind of refers to them as the handsman. In their places, King Aerys appointed men of his own favor, but the king's favor had become a chancy thing. His mistrust easy to awaken. Even the hand's own kin were not exempt from royal displeasure. When Lord Tywin wished to name his brother Sir Tygett Lannister as the Red Keep's master at arms, Sir Aerys gave the post to Sir Willem Darry instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, about this time is when King Aerys it says he becomes aware that the widespread belief that he himself was but a hollow figurehead and Tywin was the true master of the Seven Kingdoms.
Right, and he's upset. He wants to kind of do something to correct that. And I guess so this is kind of neat. You get some insight into when you have tourneys. I mean, King can make a tourney whenever he wants, but they kind of come up with the great anniversary
tourney.
Of
272 AC.
Yeah, and that's his 10th year, right?
Yep. Yeah, his 10th year. His 10th year upon the throne. Joanna Lannister brought her 6-year-old twins Jaime and Cersei from Casterly Rock to present before the court. The king asked her if giving suck to them had ruined your breasts, which were so high and proud. The question greatly amused Lord Tywin's rivals, who were always pleased to see the hand slighted, and it just humiliates Joanna, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then Tywin attempts to return his chain of he
gives up the
he tries to leave. Yeah, he tries to leave, but the king refuses his resignation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, who can give it to you? Like, things have been running so smoothly, and like you're trying to now take credit. Really, the king is his worst worst enemy. He is trying to undo all these good things. And again, we're getting just this perspective. There might be, obviously, it sounds like there are other High Lords who aren't getting all the benefits of what Lord Tywin's laws and rulings and things like that. But
yeah, and basically what this does is it says he could dismiss Tywin at any time, but instead he kind of wants to keep him close, laboring on his behalf, even though he begins to undermine him. Kind of this is where Tywin starts to undermine the king. And it says, he's just kind of making fun of Tywin whenever he gets a chance, and Tywin just suffers in silence. Yeah, because he knows he's just plotting. I think he's beginning to kind of plot and say, okay, I think this is about the time that I get out.
Right.
So in 273, we said Tyrion comes and. It says, this is just interesting about Tyrion. The babe was a malformed dwarfish babe born with stunted legs, an oversized head, and mismatched demonic eyes. Some reports also suggested he had a tail which was looped off at his lord father's command. Lord Tywin's doom. The small folk called it this ill-made creature and Lord Tywin's bane. Upon hearing of his birth, King Aerys infamously said, "The gods cannot abide such arrogance. They have placed a fair flower from his hand and given him a monster in her place to teach him some humility at last." So just
right.
Tyrion. I know.
Yeah, so I mean, but there when you read this, so there's really no. I mean, in 272, he's at the tourney, he's insulting her, and it doesn't sound like there was anything. It sounds like it was like if anything happened, it was like years before, right? Where
that would have to be it. It would have to be at that tourney for it to be.
Right, and it sounds like she was humiliated and things, and Tywin's super suspicious. Nothing's going to happen there unless a fight's going to break out, war, etc. So I just don't see it happening. But unless he did it in secret and silently pressed himself on her or something crazy. But that I don't know. So.
Yeah, so Tywin stays on as Hand of the King, still dealing with the Seven Kingdoms. The king grew. The king is really starting to grow more erratic and violent and suspicious. It says Aerys began to surround himself with informers, paying handsome rewards to men of dubious repute for whispers, lies, and treasons. And this is where he brings over Varys.
Right, he brings over Varys. A quick little note: Sir Ilan Payne is actually close with the Lannisters, and that's something to remember. And actually, is like mocking the king. That's when he gets his tongue cut out. Yep. So just an interesting.
Yeah, with red hot pincers.
Yeah. So just a neat connection back to the series. So you know who Ilan Payne is in league with. So. But yeah, then he brings on Varys and he starts to kind of suspect everybody. He had heard rumor of this Master of Whisperers type of thing, and so he decides to bring him over.
274. The Queen Rhaella gives birth to another son. Gonna call him Prince Jaehaerys, and it says this is like the Queen. It seems to restore himself to his old self. But then Prince Jaehaerys dies a year later, and then Aerys goes back into despair.
I mean, he honestly has like a rough road there,
he
too.
Does.
Like all those kids are being born and dying and stuff. It's like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, this is like because after the tragedy of Summerhall, I don't know if we mentioned it, but like that really cut down the Targaryens.
Absolutely.
Like there's a lot of them that like died in that tragedy, and so he's trying to repopulate them, bring them back.
Because his dad dies, like just before him, and so then it's really like him and
just a couple branches is what it says after Summerhall, just the tree left.
Him and his sister, right? Who is his wife, I think.
Yeah, there might be more if you go back and look at who was coming down off of the other. That they weren't in the royal line, but there were other Targaryens. It doesn't really tell us who or what, or when, etc. But
and so anyway, so after this Prince Jaehaerys, that's a baby that dies. This is when King Aerys, I think, again, this is like that next step in descent into madness. Says he fasts for a fortnight and makes a walk of repentance across the city to the Great Sept, which just causes me to think of Cersei. Yeah. To pray with the High Septum. On his return, he announced that he would sleep only with his lawful wife, Queen Rhaella. If the chronicles can be believed, Aerys remained true to his vow, losing all interest in the charms women from that day in 275 AC.
Dang, that's crazy, right? I mean,
clearly he must be sleeping with other women.
Yeah, but before that point, yeah. Right. And so the gods are frowning upon him essentially because he's doing they. I mean, he didn't. It wasn't as many as like Aegon,
or Robert, or
the unworthy, you know. But yeah, it's a lot, and so he repents here, and then he's actually rewarded the next year with Viserys.
Yeah.
So which is neat. So he gets a son that's going to live, and is robust.
And then he gets a crown later. So,
yeah.
So the birth of Prince Viserys makes him kind of says, although it doesn't. When he's born, though, it says it makes him more fearful and obsessive because he's like super nervous that something bad is going to happen to his son. And so he has like Kingsguard constantly protecting him, and he has like food testers.
Right.
And so, it says that he wants like food testers to suckle on like his wet nurses to make sure that that she didn't smear poison on their nipples, and just like super weird and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now they say something interesting here that Lord Tywin actually, in celebration of Viserys' birth, tried to make a good gesture here and actually to reconcile things, and holds a tourney
in Viserys' name.
Right, in Viserys' name, and King Aerys at first refused to attend, then relented, but the queen and her newborn son were kept under confinement back at King's Landing.
Yeah.
There, seated on his throne amongst hundreds of nobles in the shadow of Castle Rock, the king cheered lustily at as his son Prince Rhaegar, newly knighted, unhorsed. Both of is it Tyget and
Tyget and Garen Lannister.
Those are Tywin's brothers,
and even overcame Sir Barristan Selmy before falling in the champion's tilt to the renowned Kingsguard Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the first time we hear of Sir Arthur Dayne. Perhaps seeking to gain advantage of his grace's high spirits, Lord Tywin chose that very night to suggest that it would pass times for the king's heir wed and produce his heir of his own, and this is where he proposes Cersei to marry Rhaegar.
Yeah.
And wow, if only he'd done that.
Yeah, you mean if he would have just taken that right then and there?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was really, I mean, he's still, like, although it's a good gesture, I mean, and he's trying to reconcile things, all he can hear in the back of his mind is people saying that he wants to separate himself from Tywin.
Yep.
He's really trying to show the realm that he's the king, And so all he sees in this is like another way for Tywin to, bolster his own power and his reach and everything. So, he vetoes that.
Yeah, and so said he does what he nor did his great. It says he calls him like he reminds Lord Tywin that he is a good and valuable servant, yet a servant nonetheless. He also does not agree to appoint Jaime as a squire to Prince Rhaegar, and later he screws. I guess you could argue screws Jaime over, and more so Tywin over big time.
Yeah.
And so it says around this time, it was pretty plain to see in around 277 that Aerys is really starting to slip into madness. And this is where the final break happens. You have the defiance of Duskendale. The harbor town of Duskendale had been a seat of kings of old in the days of the 100 Kingdoms. Once the most important on the Blackwater Bay, the town had seen its trade dwindle and its wealth shrink as King's Landing grew and what is that word, Cesar?
I don't know where you're at.
I don't know. Anyway, just as it grows. A decline that its young lord, Dennis Darkland, wished to halt. Many have long debated why Lord Darkland chose to do what he did, but most agree that his Mirish wife, Lady Sarala, plays a part. And basically they kidnap ultimately the king. Ultimately what happens is it starts out with just kind of like a defiance of the kingdom, and then they just they kidnap him, and then it's actually
well, it's crazy because because the Mad King actually refuses the advice of Tywin, and he actually doesn't say that he traveled to Duskendale with a small escort led by Gawain Gaunt of the Kingsguard. The invitation proved to be a trap, however, and one of the Targaryen and one that the Targaryen king walked into blindly. He seized with his escort and so on. So like he was actually warned not to go there. I mean, Tywin's still trying to this is not a good idea.
Yeah, it's never a good idea for the king to just go into like a hostile.
Great, it's literally doesn't it? I don't know. You think if he's super suspicious and everything,
it is weird.
I actually think there were people that once he starts to kind of push, maybe we'll get more of this someday, but like once he pushes Tywin and Tywin's men and the Westermen out, it's like he surrounds himself with these other people who take advantage of the Mad King. And so I think they actually might have pushed him. And this is me, again, speculating.
That's possible,
on my own, but I just think they want to send him in there to let him get captured. So
Pycelle says that he wants to settle this himself, right? Mm-hmm. And so he goes and he basically gets captured. And then, they're put in this like ridiculous situation.
Yeah.
And they're basically saying like, if you come in here, we're going to kill him. But I don't know what their plan is. I just don't think they ever expected it. I think,
yeah, what happened there that caused them to seize him and like actually, capture him,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So
yeah, and so then it's like Tywin and these other people are kind of like in shock. It says there's people who are saying if you do like a sudden assault to kind of free the town and punish these rebels, then they're just gonna kill the king. Taking by storm would be no easy task. Lord Tywin sends out riders and ravens. He's starting to build up this force, and then Lord Dennis Darkland says anybody who tries to come in here, and that town is kind of like a fortress the way it's built.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Saying anybody who does it, we're gonna kill him. But it is interesting because obviously Rhaegar is young, and he at this point what we know about Rhaegar is that he's bookish, but obviously you would have to think there are people.
He's old enough to be king. I mean,
well, he is, or at least have a regent for a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's over. I think he's 18.
He still has his mom.
Yeah, I think he's 18 or 17 right now. And
yeah, he would be. Yep.
Yeah, and so it's like
you would have to think that there would be people at this point that are like,
cool.
Yeah,
go for it. We've got Rhaegar.
You wouldn't need Robert's Rebellion. You wouldn't need any of that stuff, right?
Because not like they have
the
other royal family. He took some of his council members with him and some of his Kingsguard, which are slayed. They're killed there,
right?
Trying to defend the king, but.
And you would have to think that we don't get this, but the end, because later Rhaegar's plan is to overthrow his dad.
Yeah.
Once we get to the tourney at Harrenhal and stuff like that, and so you would have to think at this point Rhaegar is now we're totally off the World of Ice and Fire book, just tinfoil hatting it here, but the way I think about it is, at this point Rhaegar he's already picked up the sword,
and
potentially started really realizing this. Three heads of the dragon kind of thing. Whether that does relate to Azor Ahai or not, we at least know that Rhaegar is all about the three heads of the dragon. That kind of prophecy, whether it does tie into Azor Ahai or not. Right. So he's got to be thinking about going that. So he doesn't. He at least doesn't think he needs to be king. So what is it later? That is it just when the Mad King burns, Brandon Stark is when he's like, all right, we gotta. No, because the tourney at Harrenhal happens before that.
Right. Yeah. Before that.
Yeah. So
anywho, but now back to this. They actually, so Tywin, I mean, again, showing his just that he's trying to do what's best for the realm. Yeah. Shows up, surrounds, Duskendale,
mm-hmm.
and they're in there. I think they believe. The Lord of Duskendale believes that he can outwait. He'll get better terms because basically Tywin tells him surrender, complete surrender.
Yep.
Put an end to this, etc. Otherwise, I'm going to come in there and kill every single one of you.
Well, you'd have to know if you surrendered, you're dead too.
Well, it sounded like his terms were though, if you surrender completely and everything, that you would be spared. Yeah. Although you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking, no, we're dead.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's maybe they'll spare.
You're in a no-win situation. I mean, I don't even think you could take the black.
But my question: who in there?
Also, what is Aerys gonna do? Aerys, if. Aerys,
exactly. Yeah, once Aerys gets back in power, he's gonna want to kill every single one of those guys.
Yeah, you're
right about that.
Yeah, your only hope is to be like, we want safe passage to Essos. At this point, you're screwed.
Right, exactly. So anyways, Tywin's kind of refusing to give them any different terms, etc. He refused again. Lord Tywin promised he would take down the town by storm and put every man, woman, and child, within to the sword. And they say that he sent his bard to deliver the ultimate command, and commanded him to sing the Rains of Castamere,
mm-hmm.
For Lord Denny's, and So, and that was
Yeah, and right here though is there's people are saying most of the small council thought that you're going to kill the king, and Tywin says, you know, he may or may not die, but if he does, we have a better king right here. Where he raised a hand to Rhaegar.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
So scholars have debated ever since what was Lord Tywin's intent. Does he do it to see if he would back down? You know, Dustin. You know.
Well, a couple things can come out of this, right? Because if Tywin does back down and stuff like that, then his reputation also. So he's win-win here, right here. So
he is in a no-lose situation.
Exactly. So he either gets this guy who's just been insulting him and his wife and stuff like that killed, and gets to place a new, you know, respectable young man on the throne and possibly still be hand of the king and still kind of do his thing. And also, if it doesn't work out that way, then he showed the realm that he is not going to balk. You know, he is going to basically, you know, follow through
and
on
even
his promise.
and even if it goes totally south and they do kill him, he's in this situation where it's like, well, like, what do you want? What else could we have done? Like, this has been going on for like months,
right?
So he's in there for like 6 months. So
yeah.
But then what happens here? None will ever know for certain, thanks to the courage of Sir Barristan Selmy of the Kingsguard. Sir Barristan offered to enter the town in secret, find his way to the Dunfort, and spirit the king to safety. Selmy had been known as Barristan the Bold since his youth, but his boldness, but this was a boldness that Tywin Lannister felt bordered on madness. Yet such was his respect for the prowess and courage of Sir Barristan that he gave him a day to attempt his plan before storming Duskendale. And we've been talking about the feats of Sir Barristan Selmy,
right?
Leading up to this, I remember he beat Sir Duncan the Tall. He slew Maenys or what night?
The monstrous
Meleys, Blackfire.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then he ends up doing it. Barristan
totally gets him out.
Totally succeeds, 100%.
100%. Yeah. And really, what's interesting is after this, like, they don't even realize. Takes him some time to realize that Aerys has actually been out of the dungeon. Yeah. Right. So yeah, and it goes on to say that not only did he fight, so after he gets him out and he gets him to safety, and then the true breadth of Sir Barristan's heroism was revealed, for he stood and fought rather than surrender himself or the king. So. Is he caught there for a second? What happens there?
Yeah, they kind of the king's absence has been noted.
Oh, okay,
and a cry goes up. So Barristan Selmy's fighting like a bunch of people,
right?
Because he's a boss.
He's a boss.
I mean, he's a boss. Yeah, he's like okay. I mean,
he takes out Lord Darkland's good brother and master at arms, which is a pretty big deal, you know. And a couple other guardsmen, you know, he takes them down. Yeah, so he's avenging the deaths also of his Kingsguard brother. Brothers, which is kind of cool because they were in there.
Gaunt, the Kingsguard who'd been killed at Hollard's hand. So he runs the stable, excuse me, and gets him out to the Dunfort, and then he races up the walls as Lord Tywin's archers, tends to kind of clear of defenders, and then when they're out, I mean, Tywin we're going in.
Yeah. So when Darkland and his family were presented to the king later, this is to Aerys. Aerys demanded their deaths, and not only Darkland's immediate kin, but his uncles and aunts, even distant kinsmen in Duskendale. Wow, isn't that crazy, right? Yeah, I mean, as you said, like there was no. They probably, I would think they would that they would know this. So it says that they. It says that they doubtfully knew the terrible revenge that the king, you know, would intend. So, anyways, he kills them all, and it's pretty.
Well,
awesome.
except for one.
Only Sir Simon's young nephew.
Yeah, Dantas Hollard.
Dantas Hollard.
Yeah, who was Sir Dantas,
which is
interesting. He's he's the one who gets super drunk and helps Sansa escape.
Yeah, good point. That's a good connection there. Yeah. And then only then, because Sir Barristan begged that mercy, be that the king have some mercy, and the king, he couldn't refuse Sir Barristan. Barristan,
right?
He saved him, right? So that's interesting.
And then Lady Sarala, hers was a crueler death. Aerys had the lace serpent's tongue and her womanly parts torn out before she was burned alive. Ooh.
Yeah, why?
Why? It's so weird.
Yeah,
and then right here, so it really says like captivity at Duskendale had shattered whatever sanity he has left. This is where he doesn't shower, doesn't bathe, doesn't trim his nails, and they grow to these like long kind of claw type things.
Right, he's losing it.
Yeah, he's losing. He says like, no sword can be around me except for the sword of my Kingsguard.
Yeah.
This is where he becomes like crueler and harsher, and that was really the first person I think he's like, we're burning her, and I think that's really where it starts. So anyway, so he goes back, and then he says he's almost like a prisoner in his own castle for the next 4 years, where he's just growing more suspicious of anyone around him, Tywin in particular. Prince Rhaegar, he was convinced, had conspired with Tywin to have him slain at Duskendale. So this is where he's.
We probably heard rumors and stuff,
right?
You know?
So this is where he at this point he's not even,
right?
You know, he's wary of even Rhaegar.
Yeah, his own son and Tywin there. So yeah,
and we don't. And you know, one thing this chapter does not mention at all is anything about his relationship with Viserys. Because we know Viserys is just, you know, a little kid. I mean, Viserys is maybe 3 or 4. I would have to think by the time he flees.
Okay,
just not at the top of my head. So I don't know if Viserys knows much really about.
Yeah, it was a little bit. Wait, you mean when he's
because he flees the Dragonstone? But I mean, clearly he's.
Oh yeah, I think he. Well, yeah. At this time, he's 3.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like later on, he's like what 7 or 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, he doesn't know much about
he doesn't
these events at all. But I mean, he's just heard about them.
Right.
Yeah, as he grew up, again, he's still super young when he takes off out of there. But
yeah, so finally, he finally gets rid of Tywin.
Yeah, and he starts to kind of call some close friends around, right?
Yeah, so determined to prevent that from happening. That's Rhaegar and Tywin overthrowing him. King Aerys turned to another friend of his childhood, summoning Steffon Baratheon from Storm's End and naming him to the small council. In 278 AC, the king sent Lord Steffon across the narrow sea on a mission to Old Volantis to seek a suitable bride for Rhaegar. A maid of noble birth from an old Valyrian bloodline. That is grace entrusted this task to Lord Storm's End rather than his hand or Rhaegar himself speaks volumes. The rumors were rife that Aerys meant to make Lord Steffon his new hand upon the successful completion of the mission. That Tywin is about to be removed from office, arrested, and tried for high treason. There was a many lord who took delight in that prospect. The gods, on the other hand, they have like a different outcome. Steffon Baratheon's mission ends in failure. On his return from Volantis, his ship sinks in Shipbreaker's Bay within sight of Storm's End. Said Lord Steffon and his wife were both drowned as their 2 elder sons watched from the castle walls.
Right,
and
so Robert and
Stannis. And this we get a little more telling with Patchface, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, Patchface.
The only one who washed up and was spared.
Yeah, it's Patchface. Yeah, and then it just goes on a a little bit here.
The Aerys thought basically that Tywin was had some hand in this.
Had some hand in it, yeah. And then
that's the madness for sure.
Yeah. You know? In the years that follow, the king's madness deepened. Though Tywin Lannister continued his hand, Aerys no longer met with him, save in the presence of all 7 Kingsguard. Convinced that the small folk and lords were plotting against his life, and fearing that even Queen Rhaella and Prince Rhaegar might be part of these plots, he reached across the narrow sea to Pentos, and this is where he brings in Varys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. He brings in Varys. He starts to get this obsession with wildfire too at the same time. So he's collecting pyromancers. He's basically setting up the defenses around himself as much as he can. So
he wants Dragonstone. He wants dragons or dragon eggs brought from wherever. Says he brings a lot from Dragonstone. Some old that they in fact were stone.
Yeah, exactly. So. And then it's around 280 AC is when he
turns to the Guild of Alchemists.
Right, and right shortly after that, the whole realm is basically now starting to nickname him the Mad King. Mm-hmm.
He starts 280s when he starts burning people. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's interesting. He becomes obsessed with dragon fire. And then it says he turns to the alchemist who knew the secret of wildfire, which is said to be like a close cousin. So there is like this difference between wildfire and dragonfire,
right? Yep.
Which is just interesting because that raises a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Going forward, about
it does.
Can wildfire kill
Yeah, what are the differences? What are the different properties?
Right. What are the different properties? Can
Yeah.
wildfire kill whites or others? I would assume it would kill whites because it seems like regular fire can. But
Yeah.
can it kill White Walkers as opposed to dragon fire, which we're assuming dragon fire can kill White Walkers.
Right.
In the show, we just see it kill a bunch of whites. We don't see it kill a White Walker.
Yep. So moving on just a bit now, we switch back to Rhaegar here just a little bit. In his relationship, he's actually betrothed to Princess Elia Martell in 279 AC, and obviously they choose not to live in the Red Keep.
Yeah.
Because Dad's going crazy, and whatnot. So his younger siblings were not allowed to attend the wedding, though. So really, they're kept locked up in the Red Keep, and they actually chose to reside in Dragonstone. So that's where Rhaegar goes with his wife. So there's that. Let's see.
And so you're right. This is where people are. A bunch of rumors are getting spread up that Rhaegar is gonna plan to depose his father and seize the Iron Throne for himself.
Yeah, and some of this I got into when we talked about Rhaenys. Rhaenys, who was born in 280 AC, and how she looked a lot like her mother, Elia Martell. And when she's taken, so this would be Aerys' granddaughter, his first grandchild, and
his second grandchild.
Okay, who's the first one?
Aegon. No, you're right.
Oh, okay, yeah, first one, Rhaenys.
Yeah.
So, because that's Rhaegar's oldest daughter,
right? Yeah.
Oldest child. Basically, dismisses the child as even kind of smells Dornish. Doesn't takes no interest, but Rhaella does, though. She embraces the babe warmly and whatnot. So so there's that. Let's see the rest of this, though. Boy, we're gonna get into. Is the Tourney of Harrenhal coming up here?
The Tourney of Harrenhal is.
Or is that next week?
That's next week. Yeah. So
we're gonna stop before his reign is truly over. Correct?
Yeah. We will be stopping because that's the Fall of the Dragon and Robert's Rebellion are we got it.
They're big.
Yeah, you got to
spend enough time. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
So really, the last thing that really kind of happens here, and this ultimately ends when Tywin leaves, right?
Yeah,
I think is where this chapter ends. So really, the final kind of nail in the straw is right here. In 281 AC, however, the aged Kingsguard knight Sir Harlan Granson passes away in his sleep, and the uneasy accord between Aerys and his hand finally snapped when His Grace chose to offer a white cloak to Lord Tywin's eldest son. At 5 and 10, Sir Jaime Lannister was already a knight, an honor he had received from the hand of Sir Arthur Dane, Sword of the Morning, who many consider to be the knight's most chivalrous war. Jaime's knighthood had been won during Sir Arthur's campaign against the outlaws known as the Kingswood Brotherhood, and none could doubt his prowess. Sir Jaime is also, obviously, we know he's Tywin's heir, and this, House
it pisses Tywin off.
Absolutely, this is the ultimate slap in the face to Tywin,
right?
Because now
he has no one to.
He has no other heir. Well, I mean, he does technically. That it's
right, but not one that he's proud of.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because it's Tyrion, right? So, and he is trying to, the hand had been in the midst of negotiating an advantageous marriage pact for Sir Jaime. I wonder who he was trying to marry Jaime to. Do we know?
Who? The king?
Tywin was already trying to marry. Was trying to marry Jaime off.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Actually, that's a really so he kind of spoils those plans. It doesn't really say. But we could probably speculate quite a bit, as to relationships he's trying to make.
Yeah. Because that's super interesting.
Yeah. So, but the final leaving there is I think Lord Tywin actually he has to kind of retire his hand. He's basically claiming that he's ill.
Right.
And Aerys is delighted.
Yep.
And lets him go, and he's good. He replaces him with Lord Owen Merryweather.
He was an old guy, and
right.
Yeah, and he's famed for laughing loudest at every jape and joke that the king makes, no matter how feeble.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So henceforth, His Grace told Pycelle that the realm would know for certainty that the man who wore the crown also ruled the Seven Kingdoms. Aerys Targaryen and Tywin Lannister had met as boys, had fought and bled together in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, and had ruled the Seven Kingdoms together for close to 20 years. But in 281 AC, this long partnership, which had proved so fruitful to the realm, came to a bitter end.
Yeah. Shortly before Lord Walter Went had announced plans for a great tourney to be held at his seat at Harrenhal to celebrate his maiden daughter's name day, King Aerys chose this event for the formal investiture of Sir Jaime Lannister as the Knight of the Knight of the Kingsguard, thus setting in motion the events that would end the Mad King's reign and write an end to the long rule of House Targaryen in the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do end right there before this tourney, is set up, and this is where he's gonna they're gonna give Jaime his white cloak, and and so. Famous tourney, we talk about it all the time. A lot goes down there, and what have you. So
so next week I think we're actually going to be doing 2 chapters, just because they're both in a way they're both kind of short. Robert's Rebellion is actually only like 2 pages in this book. So you have kind of the tourney at Harrenhal, the events that lead up to Robert's Rebellion, and then Robert's Rebellion.
Yep.
So
yeah. Wow. Okay. So that was a long one, but we wanted to kind of get in some more intel on Aerys.
This is everything that sets up the first book. So
yeah, it is. It is. So and again, next week's Maester study will be kind of detailed as well too, as we get into tourney and rebellion.
Yeah.
So okay, let's dive into the reread here.
We are in Eddard 6, I believe.
Yep.
So last week we were in John 4. The way these chapters have kind of worked these past few weeks, it's like Eddard, John, Eddard. So, so last week we were in John 4, and where Samuel Tarly had appeared in the yard while John is training the other recruits. Sir Alistair Thorne had ordered Sam to be beaten, and he yields, and John and his friends aid the new recruit, and later he talks with Sam, and he convinces the other recruits to go easy on him, despite Alistair Thorne's commands. So, 2 weeks ago, and the last time we were in Eddard, Ned had spoken with Grand Maester Pycelle about Lord John Arryn's final days. On his ways back, he finds Arya training to be a water dancer. Later, he is visited by Littlefinger, who finds Lord Arryn's household remaining in King's Landing. And then this week we're in Eddard 6. Ned and the small council deal with policing problems caused by the upcoming tourney. After the meeting, Jory Cassell reports to Ned on interviews with John Arryn's remaining household. The report includes mention of visits by Lord Arryn and Stannis Baratheon to a brothel and an armorer. Ned orders Jory to identify the brothel and goes to visit the armorer himself. There he discovers an apprentice named Gendry, who looks astonishingly like King Robert.
Yeah.
Is it Gendry or Gendry?
Yeah, I've always, back in the day, it's some people call him Gendry, but the audiobook says Gendry,
It's true. I'm going to call him Gendry.
Yeah, I think
if I just read it though, that's how I would read it. I would not say Gendry.
Yeah. Okay. Except for that E sometimes makes that G say Jen. Saying. So, but no, it's however you want to say it. Gendry. How do they say it in the show?
Gendry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've said it that way for years, so that's what we're going to say. We're going to say Gendry.
Yeah.
Which is fine. And yeah, this is basically a lot of what I want to talk about in this chapter has to do with Gendry, but I guess we'll kind of set this up and get there. Some important parts from the start of this is that the Hands tourney is causing bunch of knights, bunch of free riders, men and ladies in attending, all this type of stuff are coming with each knight. So each knight is kind of bringing a host of people, and for that whole host, there's even more thieves in the city. And so Janna Slint is the commander of the City Watch, and he comes up later. He's someone who you guys will probably know from the show, and later in the books. He's someone who is a thorn in the side of Jon Snow and company later on. So,
yeah, right here. So I just find it interesting. Just right off the bat, you have Lord Renly talking to Janos Slint. He says, "If you cannot keep the king's peace, Janos, perhaps the City Watch should be commanded by someone else." Or someone who can, which is immediately what Tyrion does in the next book. That's one of his first acts as Hand as he gets rid of James Slint. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's treacherous and sort of the way in which he is either bought or paid off by Littlefinger or whatnot. It's just not good. But I mean, it's crazy because of the betrayal. Ned actually gives him men from his own house here to kind of help keep the peace, and that's what he's in there complaining about. And so they hire 50 new
About
men,
50 men, yeah.
and then 20 from his own household guard. And he tells Littlefinger, if you can find millions of coin for the freaking hands tourney, then you can find
and Ned
to,
hates the fact that it's called the hands tourney because he wants nothing to do with it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the realm prospers from such events, my lord. Grand Maester Pycelle said. They bring the great the chance of glory, and the lowly a respite from their woes, and puts coin in many a pocket. Littlefinger adds, every inn in the city is full, and the whores are walking bow-legged and jingling with each step.
Yeah, and they have a point, but not. It's true in the days of old that the tourneys did do those things, but not when the crown is this much in debt. Is sort of Ned's point, right? It's he sees the value in tourneys.
In modern times, something that's kind of, I guess, similar is Have you ever read like the news articles about the Olympics and when towns are being chosen?
Right.
Is that like, oh, it's great, but they have to spend so much money on building these stadiums, and then like they don't know what to do with them afterwards,
right?
Like, what do we do with this like Olympic stadium? And
right.
So
yeah.
Some people are like, it's great to get it because it shows, but you have to invest so much money.
Right. Yeah. And then what do you do with all that afterwards?
Because it's set up so like specific.
Can turn into a ghost town or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Afterwards.
Yeah. So.
Yep. So, but anyways, after he's done with the small council there, I think they kind of they're prepping for it. They're getting the city under control. And
there's a little foreshadowing here. Lord Brenly laughed. We're fortunate my brother Stannis is not with us. Remember the time he proposed to outlaw brothels? The king asked him if perhaps he'd like to outlaw eating, shitting, and breathing while he was at it, if truth to be told. Then it just talks about his marriage and how he goes into bed marching like a man to a battlefield.
Yeah.
But Ned had not joined their laughter. I wonder about your brother Stannis as well. I wonder what he intends when he intends to end his visit to Dragonstone and resume his seat on this council.
Yeah, it's super. It's one of those things where you're like, wait a second. There's a council member that's not there. What is he doing? Why did he leave? And this mystery surrounding Jon Arryn's death. That Ned is looking into, and we're gonna learn more about who was with Jon Arryn in some of his last days. So he heads back up to the Tower of the Hand, and he summons Jory just to kind of fill him in on. I need 20 men to kind of head out and help, there. And while he's waiting for Jory or for that to unfold, he looks into that book that was given to him by Maester Pycelle, right?
Yeah, the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, with description of many high lords and noble ladies and their children, by Grand Maester Mallion. Yeah, Pycelle had spoken truly. It made for ponderous reading, yet Jon Arryn had asked for it, and Ned felt certain he had his reasons. There was something here, some truth buried in these brittle yellow pages. If only he could see it, but what? Talks about it's over a century old. Scarcely a man now alive had been born when Mallion had compiled his dusty list of weddings, births, and deaths.
Yep.
So he opens it to the section of House Lannister, turns the pages slowly, hoping to find something. And then it just talks a little bit about their Lannister family history. Trades all the way back to Lan the Clever, a trickster from the Age of Heroes who was no doubt legendary as Bran the Builder. But we learn a little bit more about Lan the Clever.
He kind of wishes he would have had some of his wit here to figure out what the heck is going on in this book. But go ahead.
He ends up really what ends up happening is he kind of tricks the Casterlys out of Casterly Rocks with no weapons. He steals gold from them. And Ned, says Ned wishes he was here now. Then Jory kind of comes in. I promise the city watch 20 of my guard until the tourney is done. And then they talk about the stable boy because they're still looking for that stable boy, which is
So they had sent Jory out to actually go question some of Jon Arryn's, like the knight, his squire, who then became a knight, and some of his other household members, servants, and things. And so one of them that they were looking at was this stable boy, and basically, not much came from this stable boy at all, really. He just talks about that he talks about what the former hand, used to give the lad coppers. Let's see, wait a second. Is that? Yeah, he used to give the lad coppers on their Name day, he says he had a way with horses, never rode his mount too hard, and brought them carrots and apples, so they were always pleased to see him. He is questioning the stable boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. He's questioning the stable boy, and then he basically just gets kind of information, and then they kind of learn about where Jon Arryn was going, and this is where they start talking about the person who I think we know is Sir Hugh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he talks to a serving girl. He says she said Lord John had been reading more than was good for him, and that he was troubled and melancholy over his youth son's frailty. And gruff with his lady Rife. The pot boy, now Cordwainer, had never exchanged so much with a word but Lord John, but he was full of oddments of the kitchen gossip. The Lord had been quarreling with the king, so the Lord only picked at his food. Just kind of talking about Jon Arryn's kind of descent. His last days. He's kind of descending into his
last
own
few
madness.
Months, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit. Right here, though. The Lord had visited a master armorer to commission a new suit of plate, wrought all in pale silver with a blue jasper falcon and a mother of pearl moon on the breast. The king's own brother had gone with him to help choose the design. The potboy said, "No, not Lord Renly, the other one, Lord Stannis." Mm-hmm. Which is interesting. It isn't, it like, that is weird because Stannis Baratheon is just not going to go. Like, he does not seem like, one, he has friends, and two, like, even if Jon Arryn were somewhat his friend, that is just obviously an odd thing that Stannis Baratheon is going to go, let's go just pick you out a suit of armor. You know what I mean? That is like the last thing he seems like he would do. He'd be like, pick it out yourself. Like,
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the real reason I think he brings Stannis is so he has someone to confide in, and
he's King's brother.
And Stannis can look and be like, this is definitely Rofford's son. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and what's interesting, and don't forget this, so right here, I just noticed something as I'm doing this reread. The Lord had visited the master armorer to commission a new suit of plate, as you just said, silver with a blue jasper falcon and a mother of pearl moon on the breast. We find out later the one that they go visit.
Isn't Sir Hugh of the Vale who wears that armor?
Is that,
or was that for him?
Well, you see later on. Remember, they say that he didn't. He goes, are you the one who commissioned that suit of armor for, for Jon Arryn? And he basically says, no. Unfortunately, he did not grace me with his,
That's right. Yeah,
which is interesting, right? So maybe that was just he was seeking multiple, or maybe he was trying to not draw attention to this armorer. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so he doesn't go there for his armor. I don't know. So anyways, so they're inquiring about that, and it's just trying to figure out what was going through his head. And then
he often went riding with Lord Stannis. And
right.
Stannis, again, Ned thought he finds that really curious. Jon Arryn had been cordial but never friendly. And while Robert had been riding north to Winterfell, Stannis had removed himself to Dragonstone. Mm-hmm. So Ned's starting to put some of the pieces together here. He says they visited a brothel, and he says the Lord of the Eyrie and the Hand of the King visited brothels with Stannis Baratheon. This seems like nothing that Stannis would ever do.
It's suspicious, It's suspicious
absolutely.
that they're doing this, and
this boy they're questioning insists it's true.
Right.
They take guardsmen with him. Ned asks which brothel. The boy doesn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then the question becomes like, at what point do we just call Stannis and ask him? Mm-hmm. When do we send? When do we send for him? And he's not ready to do that yet. He wants to kind of figure out more to this because, it's troublesome. It's just it's very interesting.
Which, man, is like one of the worst things, Ned.
I know.
Had Ned, because if Stannis
back.
If Stannis were there, like.
Yeah, I know.
Joffrey would not be ascending to the throne.
When even Renly might have fallen in line a little bit more. You know what I mean? So,
although then again, I don't know, because then Ned wouldn't be taking capture. Well, no, because next chapter. Mm-hmm. Now we're playing What If, but it's fun. So, because next chapter, Catelyn's going to take Tyrion.
Yeah,
I think that's that chapter is next.
Yeah.
So Tywin is already dealing with that. So if Stannis were here, Stannis' army would, I don't know though, but then Stannis could call out Cersei, and they might be nothing they can do about it.
Right.
That's only, of course, if Robert were to die.
If Robert,
Robert is still alive.
A lot of what ifs. Yeah.
A lot of what ifs. Yeah. But it's fun.
No, I get you. Okay, so anyways, we kind of move on just here a little bit, and Jorah went to the wardrobe. Lord Renly is brother to Lord Stannis, as well as the king. Yet it seems that he was not invited on these rides. Ned was not sure what to make of Renly with all of his friendly ways and easy smiles. A few days past, he had taken Ned aside to show him an exquisite rose gold locket. Inside was a miniature. Miniature painted in the vivid mirror style of a lovely young girl with doe eyes and a cascade of soft brown hair. Renly seemed anxious to know if the girl reminded him of anyone, and when Ned had no answer but a shrug, he seemed disappointed. The maid was Loras Tyrell's sister Marjorie, he confessed. But there were those who said she looked like Lyanna, and then Ned just says, no, and he goes on to kind of say he wonders if, if he's just trying to, if there's some fantasy there element of like, he's entranced by this girl who looks like Lyanna, and whatever. But anyways, the whole conversation struck Ned as passing queer. So
yeah. And so then they're talking about maybe Stannis will return for that tourney, and Ned says, yeah, unlikely.
Right.
So then they get changed, and they're gonna go start investigating. Investigating people. So he sends Jory to the whorehouses, and so he's like, yeah, I'm sure the men will be glad to help. Right. With that, and then Ned wants to go talk to this armorer.
Yeah, they head down to the Street of Steel. Okay, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, let's see.
And this is really where Ned is. You get the sense at least that he knows, like, some of these men are probably Varys's. Some of these men are.
Oh yeah, just that he's being watched and things. Yeah. So anyways, let's read here a little bit. As Lord Eddard passed beneath the king's gate into the stink of the city, his gray and white cloak streaming from his shoulders, he saw eyes everywhere, as you said, and kicked his mount into a trot. His guard followed. The Street of Steel began at the market square beside the river gate, and it was otherwise named the Mud Gate. It was commonly called that. And so as he gets a little closer here, they see, oh my gosh, this is something I wanted to point out. People were kind of coming into the city. Those knights that we had talked about were coming in and out of there. He hears it. Well, it's just interesting. Remember the part where Arya is yelling out. She's selling things in the street.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny because it stood out like this. In the shadow of the wall, farmers stood beside their wagons, bellowing, "Apples, the best apples, cheap at twice the price, and blood melons, sweet as honey, turnips, onions, roots. Here you go, turnips." I just thought it was kind of funny because I'm like, oh god. So it's just describing the sounds and stuff, but later on, at least in the TV, does that happen in the book where she's selling those, the clams?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, but anyways, so as he's headed through that mud gate. The first rider through the gate carried a long black banner. Yeah, the silk rippled in the wind like a living thing. Across the fabric was blazoned a night sky slashed with purple lightning. "Make way for Lord Beric," the rider shouted. And so it's Beric Dondarrion, just super cool. He comes in there, and they kind of call out to him, "Here to fight in the Hand's Tourney, my lord." And he says, "Here to win the Hand's Tourney." Yeah, just a cool guy.
Although, let me just go ahead and say that I think, he doesn't win at all. Beric Dondarrion, I still question, how good is he as a knight?
I don't know. He's sort of like an up and coming guy who's like, I just consider him average to above average.
Okay,
like nothing.
I mean,
great.
to be fair, he does get killed by the mountain like 6 times, but he is fighting the mountain. So
but it's,
but I mean, like,
no, it's actually that's the first time he gets killed. Yeah. Right. And then the other times he gets killed, it's basically are they in trial by combat situations or not?
Well, the one is with the Hound.
The one is with the Hound, but I'd have to go look. He's just slain in battle a couple of times, and they bring him back. Yeah, I don't know. And he's losing more and more of himself each time he's brought
Right.
back. Now, what's interesting
I think
is
he's losing more and more is what's happening.
true, true. But
once you lose an eye, then it's a lot harder.
He's betrothed though to one of the Danes.
Yeah.
Which is you got to be a pretty outstanding guy to be in cahoots with them, I think. So, but I thought that was neat. So he's passing by. And we continue down to the street. They basically find the armorer, Toho Mott. Mm-hmm. Is that his name? Mm-hmm. And so that basically he gets wine for the king's hand, and he's kind of running around trying to.
Here's where Sir Ezra's. Go ahead and say it. Get your line out here.
Which one? Which we talking about?
He's talking about what he's wearing.
Oh yeah, where
what Toho Mott's wearing.
What? Yeah, he's wearing that sapphire, right?
He wore a black velvet coat with hammers embroidered on the sleeves and silver thread. Around his neck was a heavy silver chain and a sapphire as large as a pigeon's egg.
Right, and so if you remember on Fall Out Friday, we were talking about moonstones, rubies, and sapphires. Well, not sapphires, but I'm throwing sapphires in the mix now. Yeah. Because he's wearing this big, he's wearing it around his neck. Mm-hmm. It was held on a silver chain, and so I thought, as soon as I read that, I was like, wait a second. I just asked everybody on Friday to go check out where all these different,
Well, it's interesting because
stones and rubies.
As we go here, obviously Toho Mott's talking about how his work is costly. He makes no apologies for that, my lord. And we know that he is one of the only people.
Yep.
They spend a lot of time talking about just how good he is, and they say that he's one of the only people who even knows the ancient way of to work Valyrian steel, and to know that you kind of have to know some spell work.
Yep, exactly.
So then we're just tossing around the total idea that he could be a glamour.
It's a glamour. Yeah. There's more to Toho than meets the eye. In the show he's put off as this guy who's kind of a gruff, mean old guy or whatever, but he seems like he's just a master at what he does. He's also trying to sell him on some of his stuff. He knows how to mix color into the metal, so that's a big thing.
They say no other people could do it.
Right, exactly. And so he does know how to work Valyrian steel. So there's that whole bit of spell work. You kind of have to know some of the spells. Plus, he's wearing a sapphire around his neck, and he's also harboring one of Robert Baratheon's bastards, supposedly. We think.
Mm-hmm. So. And so right here, it's just interesting. This is where it talks about the hand did call upon me, but he did not honor me with his patronage, which is interesting because clearly he seems like the best armorer in the city. So if you did want a really nice,
right? It was. I think it was.
I mean, it's obviously a front is why he's going to him, but you know.
So anyways, they every time they came there though, they asked to see the boy.
Right.
And, Ned just kind of plays along. He's like, well, I want to see the boy too. That's why I'm here, And so they go to the back and they basically bring out this boy.
Real quick, though. Doesn't Jon Arryn actually get that armor made? Because isn't he buried? Or he's like, when they
I think he does make it. I think it's made.
Someone else does have it made.
I think my point was just that he doesn't choose this armorer. And it was maybe to keep the attention away from this what's happening here. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But
they asked to see the boy. He says, I want to see him as well. And he says, as you wish. And then, basically he comes out. He says, the master called over a tall lad about Robb's age, his arms and his chest corded with muscle. This is Lord Stark, the new hand of the king, he told the boy. He told the boy as Ned looked at him through sullen blue eyes and pushed back sweat-soaked hair with his fingers. Thick hair, shaggy and unkempt, as black as ink. The shadow of a new beard darkened his jaw. This is Gendry, strong for his age, and he works hard. Show the hand the helmet you made, lad. And Gendry doesn't want to show it because it's shaped like a bull, right?
Yeah.
And then he says, Gendry's like, it's not for sale. Toho Mott basically says, if he wants it, you're going to give it to him. And he says, I made it for me.
Because he's often called bullheaded and stuff like that, and so
and then Lord Stark says that he's done nothing wrong. He has some questions. He asks about what did you and Jon Arryn talk about. He says, what sort of questions? How was I, and how well was I treated, and if I liked the work and stuff about my mother, who she was, what she looked like, and all. He says, what did you tell him? The boy shoved a fresh fall of black hair off his forehead. She died when I was little. She had yellow hair, and sometimes she used to sing to me, I remember. She worked in an alehouse. Did Lord Stannis question you as well? The bald one, no, not him. He never said no word, just glared at me like I was some raper who had done in for his daughter. And I'm sure Stannis is ticked, just because it's one of Robert's bastards, and Stannis is not really about that. And also,
right, the realization though is probably dawning in Stannis that's pissing him off too.
Yeah, because
which is like he's realizing what Jon Arryn is getting to the bottom of here, which is look at the hair color, look at the jawline, look at the eyes.
Because we know Stannis knows,
and
Stannis flat out is like, that's no.
Well, and at this point also Stannis is very familiar with Edric Storm.
Yep.
Too, so he knows what that bastard looks like, and he can see what this bastard looks like. Because
Stannis, Stannis, not that these kids have a claim to the throne, which Stannis knows. I mean, he knows they have no claim to the throne. I mean, maybe they do, but I don't think Stannis to me only seems like he really wants to become king because Robert dies. He doesn't seem like he wants to usurp him or anything. He's more ticked off that he doesn't get Storm's End, which he feels is rightfully his, rather than he gets Dragonstone.
Right, yeah, because he conquered. Yeah,
right,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but Stannis never seems like he wants to usurp him.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So eventually they kind of finish the questioning there, but just the yellow hair. We're gonna get back to this. We're gonna finish this chapter. And we're gonna have a big discussion here. Just the yellow hair. She used to sing to him. She worked in an alehouse. That's what he knows. That's what he tells. Jon Arryn, and that's what he tells. And his age. I mean, he's about Robb's age, is what this says. He's a tall lad who is about Robb's age. So let's move on just a bit.
Yeah. We're gonna finish the chapter because it's almost over, and we're gonna come back and we have some.
Right. So he tells him to go. Toho tells him to go back to work. And sorry if he bothered you, my lord. He walked back to the house with the master, and then Ned says, "Who paid the boy's apprentice fee?" And Mott kind of looked at him fretfully, like, you saw the boy. He's strong. He's big. Look at those hands. I just took him in. Look at him. He's basically built for this. And Ned then urged, no, the truth now. Tell the truth. The streets are full of strong boys. The day you take on an apprentice without a fee will be the day that the wall comes down. Who paid for him? And this is key here. All he says is a lord. The master said reluctantly. He gave no name. He wore no sigil on his coat. He paid in gold, twice the customary sum, and he was paying once for the boy and once for my silence. Ned asked him to describe who this man was. He said he was stout, round of shoulder, not so tall as you, brown beard, but there was a bit of red in it, I'll swear. He wore a rich cloak, that I do remember, heavy purple velvet worked with silver threads, but the hood shadowed his face, and I never did see him clear. He hesitated a moment. My lord, I want no trouble. And, basically he says, none of us want trouble, but I fear these are troubled times. You know who the boy is. He says, I'm only an armorer, my lord. I know what I'm told. And then he says again, you know who the boy is, Ned repeated patiently. That is not a question. And then the maester says, or the master says, the boy is my apprentice. And basically, so he's not going to, he kind of shows Ned that he's not going to speak out loud and say who this boy truly is. He's been told to keep silent. He's paid for silence.
He looked in the eye. Who he was before he came to me is none of my concern.
Right.
And then Ned finishes it, and he says, if the day ever comes when Gendry would rather wield a sword than forge one, send him to me. He has the look of a warrior. Until then, you have my thanks.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much the same way. This scene is almost the same way it happens in the show.
Yeah, except for you just get this. So we're going to break a couple things down first. So Lord Arryn does not know who the mother is.
No. Doesn't
Very
seem like it.
Key. Neither does Stannis. And they both ask the question, who is your mother? Describe your mother. Tell us more about her. Now, the person who brought, this young boy here to work with this blacksmith, I bet that person does know who the mother is.
I would imagine.
Right? Okay.
Well, they would have to.
You would think. I mean, yeah, you would think they definitely know who the father is because they're paying, for this boy to be apprenticed here and to be, to have. They paid twice, once more for the silence on the whole matter. But I think a lot of people have in Reddit posts and things have speculated. The only thing they can come up with is this is Varys. They come up with like
because
Varys in
he's
disguise,
short and
round
stout.
of shoulder.
Yeah.
And so they come up
The
with
beard though. Well,
yeah, he wears a lot of disguises, and he used to be part of a mummers, troop.
Does Illyrio in the books have a beard?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
He does.
Yeah, he
Varys doesn't. But
right. A lot of people were just saying, well, possibly Varys, just disguised
himself, right? Because we know that he wears a hood sometimes when he goes to see. Yeah.
Right. So now we put on our tinfoil hats and we started to really think about, all of Robert's bastards.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got Maya Stone, who was his eldest bastard, and she is not officially recognized. She's somewhat openly known to be the king's baseborn daughter, his first one, actually. Way back when he's at the Vale, he's a young man, probably, I don't know, he's in his teens when he has this bastard daughter. And actually, when he's betrothed to Lyanna, Lyanna kind of says, he'll never, because of that bastard-born daughter, because of Maya Stone, she kind of says, well, he'll never stay faithful to just one bed,
right?
So there's that. And then next, we believe the next bastard. Now, there were many bastards. There was like 9, I think, or something. But I think one of the next ones that was born to him is Gendry, actually. And he's born in 284. Now, it just so happens that 284 is the same year that Cersei marries Robert Baratheon.
Well,
what are you saying?
There's another one who was born. I don't know if this is 100% confirmed. Let me look at this. It's a calculation, but it's on the wiki. Is Bella?
Bella, okay. Who you mean is born before Gendry.
So
is actually born in
283.
Yeah. So Maya, then Bella, then Gendry.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Gendry's born in 284.
Yeah.
And we believe Bella actually. So he stops at the
right. Yeah. So in a storm of swords when he and Arya are passing through. So we had to go back and we had to start looking at Robert's Rebellion and this timeline. About when everything, would have happened. So, got to go back in time here. So, Robert is betrothed, right, to Lyanna Stark.
Mm-hmm.
So he's up in the Vale.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he's at first. Edric Storm is younger, right?
Way younger. Yeah.
Way younger. Yeah. Yep. So he's in the Vale, and then there's like this battling that goes on. And then the first battle is the Battle of Summerhall. So then they go from Summerhall over to Ashford. And then they go way up to where the Battle of the Bells is. And that is in the Stony Sept, right? Which is where this brothel is.
Yeah.
And so what happens is at the Battle of the Bells, Robert he's like hiding out in this town at this brothel known as the Peach. It says during Robert's Rebellion, Lord Robert Baratheon hid at the Peach before the Battle of the Bells. According to Leslin, Robert laid with all of the inn's prostitutes, but his favorite was Bella's mother. And so I was kind of doing some math, doing some thinking. I think it's maybe likely that maybe Gendry's mom is also from this brothel, because it says that Gendry's mom is described as being a tavern, like
working at an alehouse.
Which just seems unlikely given that he's born in 284, because when you look at the timeline of like when the rebellion ends, because he marries Cersei in 284, the rebellion's over.
Yeah.
Right, in 284. So it seems like once he's king, he's not really going to be going to these taverns, right? Because that's when he's probably sleeping with like handmaidens and whores. They just bring him.
At least not early in his reign, because we know later in his reign he does. But early on, he's trying to be kingly.
Well, Well, I still think it seems like he's not going to. He doesn't need to go out. They just bring women to him, kind of Aegon the Fourth style. Like, I don't think he's going out to taverns as the king. I think that they're just bring, at least in the show, that's kind of the way they make it seem, is they just bring him women.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to go look at the one girl who has the little baby. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't know. Because he's pretty open about it later on. At some point, he towards the end, because there's an infant who's killed, right, later on in this book, and it's one of his bastard-born daughters who looks dark hair, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And but he's pretty open about going out. But either way, whatever, whether they bring him or whether he goes there, your point is that before he becomes king, he was at the Peach,
right?
And we know, I mean, it's basically Bella's mother is who he hooked up with and liked the most, and that Bella is his bastard daughter. She's got black hair like coal,
right?
Is as black as coal, and it looked like Robert's,
right? Because I'm wondering, how did Gendry get to King's Landing when they say he was brought to this armorer? Because it seems like he probably was in King's Landing. Someone finds him and then takes him to this armorer, unless they brought him from some other town or something to King's Landing. Right.
It's just sort of like, so if Bella is born first and then Gendry is born in that same spot that you're talking about, why wouldn't they bring Bella too? You know what I mean? Like,
what I'm saying is, or I guess the point I'm trying to make is, it seems to me like they probably did maybe bring Gendry from there to King's Landing. That way they can keep a more watchful eye over him. But because when Robert gets to King's Landing, like, the war's over. So did he would have had to have hooked up with some tavern wench in King's Landing when he's like taking it over and being coronated to have Gendry there?
Yeah, you're wonderfully setting up what I think might be is like more of the case here. So like the year 284, the same year that he marries Cersei.
Yeah.
Now, before last Friday, when we were talking about like the show theory, and I was kind of like, we got to look up some of this stuff, right? And see what happens. Later in a Game of Thrones, Cersei's talking to Ned, and she basically says that, like, at one point she said, and all it says is early in her marriage, she became pregnant with Robert's child.
Right.
I think it was the night of their, like, I think on her wedding day, before she's married to Robert, she actually hooks up with Jaime.
Yeah.
Like, immediately already, it's like one more last
Yeah, now
up.
this is where we have to separate the books and the show.
I'm talking strictly book.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Because they happen. Because I've been talking about this theory, and like there is definitely speculation the way it happens in the show, and there's definitely speculation the way it happens in the book, which Sir Ezra's about to tell you.
Yeah, because so on the day that they the wedding day for Robert and for Cersei, earlier that day, Jaime hooks up with Cersei. Later that night, you know, the bedding ceremony happens, and it's and they're bedded. Who knows what Cersei was feeling like going into that? Maybe she is optimistic, like this is going to be good. She gives herself.
It seems like she was. It says when she saw him walking down, and he's like in armor, and there's actually great pictures on the wiki. There's like the one. Have you seen it where it's like all the men with like the swords, and it just looks. He looks super cool. Yeah,
right. It does look good. So it's not until he calls her in his drunkenness, or maybe it wasn't drunk. Maybe I'm making that up. But like at some point he calls her Liana.
Yeah,
and that is where she's sort of like, oh no, like that. I mean, that just sticks with her. Maybe it happened more than once, but it definitely happened the first night there. So it says that she gets pregnant with his child.
Yeah,
and she tells Ned that she gets rid of the child.
Right.
That she gets rid of the child, and she insinuates that it's using the potions and things, and drinks things
Moon's
to kind of abort the child, possibly. But she doesn't say that, though. She doesn't actually say that the child is killed. It's just gotten rid of, like it's done away with. And so that her and Jaime kind of plotted to do that.
Right.
And so if that conception happened in 284, and then later that year, you have Gendry born that same year.
Right.
I just kind of think if you're because Sir Matt had just said, possibly once the war is over and you're trying to be kingly and you're being watched more, you can't just go out and like hit up every whorehouse. It's possible that could be that could be Cersei's son.
Right.
It's possible that Gendry could be.
Yeah, the other thing I'm saying, it's not even just about being kingly. It's like you just fought a war. Like we already know that the Martells are plotting. The Martells are not the Martells are like plotting against you. Like that's kind of known. They bring people down to question them about what happened. How did Elia Martell die? Yep. All this stuff. So like even in King's Landing, you've got to think that there are people like assassins that want to kill you. I mean, it's going to take some time before the realm kind of heals itself. We've just been under Targaryen rule for like 200 and some years. So
yeah. But it's just very interesting that this boy, his mother had, and again, it could be that what he remembers as his mother is not his mother.
Absolutely.
You know, it could be that like
and just
given to somebody else.
you know, he's super young. He just remember seeing her and being at an alehouse, which brings us into, I think it's a Storm of Swords or a Feast for Crows, where I think it's a Feast for Crows where Cersei is sleeping with Osmond Kettleblack, right?
Yeah.
And she's going out and seeing them,
Right.
And she's wearing like a hood, and she's going into these taverns.
It's like a thrill.
To make, so she's kind of you know, concealing herself. So we know that it wouldn't be against something that she would do.
Right. But it wouldn't surprise me too, as much as she loves her children and things, to like if she actually, now again the question is, did she actually ever have a birth? Because if she did, that probably would have been well known and would have been documented, like she had an actual stillbirth or something like that, but doesn't really say. It actually just says that she became pregnant and that they, you know, worked to get rid of the child. So a lot of people kind of throw that out there and say there's no way. But I just think it's the reason I thought about this was because this guy is wearing a sapphire. Okay, he works Valyrian steel. He's pretty high up there. Some mysterious lord, who you could say is Varys, I say actually might be somebody else, shows up with this boy. You know, I don't know. It could be. There's a lot of different ideas on maybe who this could be or you know whatnot. I just think it's interesting that how close you know his birth is to the year that they were actually married, and the fact that she did have early on in their marriage, she has is pregnant with Robert's child.
Right.
So, anyways, I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, she says the Ned that she, you know, she uses Moon's tea to kind of prevent. I believe I'm pretty sure she says like that her and Jaime like took care of it. Now just because I've been talking about this a little bit in the show, things happen a little bit differently. She does, it seem, actually have a child that may die, because when she's talking to Robert, so she has the conversation with Catelyn, right, where she goes in and Bran is like sick. Which we know that a conversation between them happens, right, because Tyrion tells Joffrey, like, this is all show, that like, you know, your absence, like it's been noted that you haven't done it, because we know like that Cersei and other people already have, and then we see the scene where Cersei, so that's like in the books too, so so Cersei goes and she tells Catelyn, it's all in the show, about the boy she has, and she describes him as a black-haired beauty. So that means the baby was born. Right. Now, she could have been lying to her, which is what when I first watched the series, I just thought, oh, she's just making this up, right? Right. You can tell something about her. But then she has that conversation with Robert, and she talks about, which is not in the books at all, but it's still a great scene. And it's where she says, like, even after we lost our first boy. Yeah. And so it is just interesting. She has this black-haired boy, and then ultimately, you know, I guess the question is like, what is Gendry's role in the show?
Oh, dude, I'm telling you. So that,
like, I mean, like
my whole thing is that like you spend a significant. I mean, he becomes a knight. He's
and
a
in
big
the book
deal.
too. What is his role?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like, so I honestly also you have to look at, you said, point of view. Ned, she is speaking to Ned, trying to convince him of. Basically, she's admitting that she is having a relationship with her brother, and that she doesn't have any of Robert's true. She's admitting that they are bastard born. Yeah. And then as for that first one, she basically wants to make it seem like, because here's the thing: if she lets loose that she did have an actual true-born, you know, son who she shipped away because it was Robert's true-born son, you know, and that if that gets out or whatever, it delegitimizes her. I mean, there's no chance at all for those
then
to
it would be interesting, because then Gendry would be
he is the
actual king,
the
legit king. Like, even in the show, he would have more of a claim. Well, Cersei, I don't know. Cersei just kind of takes it. So that's weird.
Does she have the heart to kill her own? Right. You know, at that time, I know she gets crueler over time. But
and also, and the thing I like about it is the idea of Gendry actually being a true-born son. Yeah. Either way, in the show or the book, is that would actually be, it would be kind of full circle, because then the Targaryens don't get on throne, and you do have the whole, especially in the show. You know, I don't know if they're going to go that route, because they're setting up the whole Jon thing. But it would be kind of more of a actual writing style, because like even when you're reading it, like, did you think Joffrey was going to die when he did? Like in the middle of a book, no, you know, or the middle of of the season in the show, where it's just like, whoa, was not expecting like that. Is just, it's super satisfying, right? But it's just like that was not at all when I expected it.
Right? No, me neither.
You know,
I know. It would be
like Red Wedding. There's definitely some prelude to,
right?
You know, Ned's death. There's obviously we know,
right?
Like you can see Joffrey's going to do something crazy there. But like when Joffrey's dead, so there are these deaths that kind of like, whoa, game changer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not expecting it.
Right. Well, and here's another question I have. So, hear me out on this connection. So some people probably thought we're completely bonkers by even talking about this, but you have Maya Stone, who basically once Robert leaves from the Vale, she's kind of forgotten, and she does help. She escorts, I think, Sansa and those guys up through the Moon Gate or something somewhere back in the Vale. She's kind of forgotten. You have other like the situation where like. Well, I guess so. She's not a highborn. That's not a relationship he had with a highborn lady, though. You know, so she's just kind of forgotten. You have Bella, who is again also a relationship that he had with just with a whore, and you know, there's no protection for her. She no one looks after her and kind of gives her any special treatment. Okay. The two cases where people are given special treatment, and maybe you just say it's because they're men and they're boys versus girls. Gendry is given special treatment. He's set up with his apprenticeship. And Edric Storm. Edric Storm openly, that was an open sort of acknowledged that happened.
Yeah.
Like Robert acknowledged that it happened. That's my bastard-born child. And then Varys would send him gifts and things like that. So he knew about that. I don't think Robert knows about Gendry. And it could be if he was born to a high... it could be another noble, lady that he hooked up with that, secreted him away, or it's Cersei, if it's just some alehouse person that like he hooks up with, and then it's like, there's something significant to the mother because we figure out who the mothers are for everyone else, right? Everyone else's mother is basically,
that's like, the entire story is who's Jon's mother.
Right. And so when I looked at this, I was like, man, it is kind of shrouded in some mystery. You just have a recollection from Gendry, who was much younger. And I get that you kind of get that with Bella too and things, but I don't know. It just seems to be sneaky because he's given such a good chance here to kind of make a living and to learn a skill and a trade. And he's kept close to King's Landing, possibly where somebody could go check on him and things. I don't know, So
yeah, so people on Reddit over here are talking that they're all over the place with this one, saying maybe he's Aegon and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, you guys are way way out of line as to who Gendry is. But I'm just my question though, and the reason I find these theories entertaining is what is Gendry's role? What is his purpose? Is it just to die? I mean, he's a knight in the books. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. We shall see. He's definitely hanging around, and he's become significant. And I was looking at possibly a relationship between him and Arya. Seemed like that was going in a good direction.
Right, because it is there's like a memes on, or not memes, but I guess I guess technically you could consider them a meme, right? Where just sometimes where people post pictures on the internet,
right?
Just because they're not funny doesn't mean they're not a meme, but where it's the picture of Robert saying to Ned in the crypts, "We have children, we'll wed our children,
right?
We'll combine our houses," and then it's like Arya and Gendry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep. So, anywho, I don't know, guys. Let us know in Ravens. Send those Ravens to BTK Cast. Let us know what you think of Gendry, his origins, who is his mother. Is it just straightforward? And that's my question. I would challenge anybody who says, "Well, it's pretty straightforward." Has anything been straightforward in this series? No, I don't think it has. So, but yeah, let me know what you think. So,
all right.
Yeah, there we go.
Big one. All right, guys, we're gonna head on over to Send Us a Raven. We have a new origin story here from Lady Jade. Hi guys, I wanted to jump in on the origin story bandwagon. It all started with my dad because he is a legend. This is the same guy who we talked about a while ago. Remember, got stabbed at that. He sounds like a legend.
Yeah, he does.
He got me reading The Hobbit when I was a little kid and Lord of the Rings. I remember his books were completely tattered from the amount of times he read them. When I got to about 15, he told me about Harry Potter. I read all of them about 5 times. So when my dad suggested a program called Game of Thrones to watch, I didn't hesitate. I was hooked from the start and decided to read the books about 2 years ago. Christmas last year, I bought my dad all of the books, which he is slowly making his way through. Since A Song of Ice and Fire, I've read Knight of Seven Kingdoms and couldn't agree with you more. It's my favorite. Hurry up, Winds of Winter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, it's the role reversed there, didn't it? You know,
Yeah.
now she's giving her dad, books to read and stuff. That's
super
cool.
awesome. Lady Jade, I just want to know, do you like The Hobbit more than Lord of the Rings, like Sir Ezra and I?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, let us know.
I'm just saying. I will go on record as saying The Hobbit is better than Lord of the Rings.
It's the original.
Books.
It's the original.
The movies.
No,
is
no.
totally,
We're talking books.
totally other way around.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, glad you also read the A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. So good. So great. So,
Yeah.
Okay, continue to send those origin stories to us, and you can always send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com. You know, and we also follow Friday on Fridays. So every Friday.
All right, guys. Well, that's kind of it for us this week. We want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing Chapter 28, Catelyn 5.
If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We will see you in a week, and remember that winter is coming.